Well, everyone, it's 3 o'clock Eastern, so I like getting started on time. Welcome to today's Sunday Business Sermon on the Creator Economy with our guest, Michael Evans. Before we get started, I just want to do a little bit of housekeeping and give our sponsor in January a shout out. This month's sponsor is the Writing Consultancy. Britta Jensen is the brains behind this operation. She offers book editing services for novelists and memoirists. You can book a free call with her anytime now through the end of April by going to the link that you see on the slide. You can also snap a picture of that QR code. It will take you to the exact same place. So thank you, Britta, for being this month's sponsor. And for those who are interested, next month's sponsor slot is open. So you can always email me if you're interested in that. All right, so let me introduce you to Michael. I first became aware of Michael, I can't remember now when I first reached out to you. It might have been 4 months ago, but I noticed Ream, a company that you have co-founded that specializes in helping authors start subscriptions. Michael is the author of a dozen science fiction thrillers. He runs a podcast called Subscriptions for Authors. He's the co-founder of Ream, as I mentioned, and he is also a student, a full-time student at Harvard University. And we got a picture here. What's your dog's name, Michael?
Her name's Sky, and she's a very big, fluffy golden doodle, as you can see.
Yes. Michael has been working on a book, which was excerpted recently at my site. I'll put the link into the chat later, called The Creator Economy for Authors, A Guide to the Future of Publishing. And the book's not out yet, but we do have a special link for you later on if you want the book. What I'm going to do for now is, rather than prattle on about how I met Michael or the background here, I'm going to let him take over and talk a little bit about the foundations of this. And then we're going to have a conversation and I think lots of Q&A. So Michael, I'm going to stop my share and turn it over to you.
That sounds wonderful. I'll begin my share right now. I'm very excited to get into this, everyone. And I'll just first ask and make sure you can see this first slide.
Yes, looks good.
Awesome. Well, the link, we'll make sure it's in the chat, but I know Jane already mentioned, but the book is actually not out yet, but it's completed, it's edited. And if you'd like to read it, you're able to download the ebook version for free. But you're probably wondering what the creator economy even is. And 2 years ago, I didn't even know that word existed, but it's something we're all a part of and something that is growing and changing this publishing industry before our eyes and presents a lot of opportunity for us authors. So we're going to get into that just in a few minutes. And then for the rest of this, we'll go for questions from everyone, because I'm really excited to see how I can help you further your author career. So before we get to the questions, I think the introduction was already made very well. So thank you for the generous introduction. This is just a slide. And I have a link tree as well that y'all can visit, that just, if you want to find all the links to things I do in one place, you can have it there. The podcast that I've run, the Facebook group we run, is all free resources to help you as an author. So they could be really useful to check out. But now on to this creator economy. And before I even define what it is, because that's important, I want to first just share some of the goals of our chat here today and what my goal is for you in becoming an expert in the creator economy. And that is that this provides us an opportunity as writers to diversify our income and to actually, by finding more readers, generate more income. Most of us probably are either, beginning or wanting to be full-time, but maybe aren't quite at the point of making it full-time yet. I know for me, that's something I face myself and still face to this day. I published my first book 5 years ago, indie author. But before that, actually, I found Jane Friedman. I was 13 at the time, and I wrote my first book. It was really maybe not the best, but we'll put that to the side. And I was looking for agents to query, and I found one of Jane's articles. So that's kind of what got me into publishing. So it's really cool for that all to come full circle today. And now since then, I've published 12 books and done everything from live streaming on YouTube, traveled the country filming videos. I've worked for creator economy startups. I've published 12 books and done everything from Facebook ads to traveling across the country to signings, you name it. I've tried it and I know how difficult this is. So I'm not here trying to sell you or tell you today that there's one way to make this career work as a writer, or that this is easy if you follow what I tell you. The beauty of this creator career and the creator economy is that you get to carve out your own path. That's the beauty. The difficulty is that figuring out what works for you and how to go about this is difficult. But luckily, I think today we can maybe help you with that. So these are our goals. And then ultimately we want to take back our power. But we'll get more into that a little bit later, because that's one of the fun things I'm passionate about. So kind of like I said, our goal, we want to help you create stories and worlds that your readers love and that give you the life of your dreams. That's the ultimate goal, right? We want to create stories that make our readers happy, and we want to be able to live a life that we enjoy as writers. I hope a lot of you are already like there, but a lot of you like me might be still striving to get there. And if you're in that boat, I think this will be great for you. So now, with a little bit of that foundation, we can talk about what is the creator economy. So first, I think we should define a creator, which we are all creators for the record. It's probably a word we've seen thrown around, maybe in some articles. And when you see the word creator, you might be thinking of a TikToker or a YouTuber or someone that's not a writer. But let me tell you that you are a writer, or sorry, you are a creator. You are a writer and you are a creator. So a creator is an individual who builds businesses with distribution and scale amplified by the internet, centered around digital communities. There's a lot of words there, a lot of words. But one thing important to note is that this internet economy made creators possible. The idea that we can now publish something online, create this Zoom that we've been doing now, and distribute it to people all over the globe, that we can connect with readers now on a global scale. That doesn't mean we'll connect with every reader across the globe, but that does mean that you can connect with readers everywhere across the globe. And that's a huge, huge innovation and change in publishing, one that is just as foundational as the printing press itself, which if we go way back to when the printing press became a thing, there wasn't even publishers back in the day. There wasn't even really a writing industry. Having the privilege to both have a book and to be able to be literate in reading was something that was much less common. And since then, we've seen the rise of a huge publishing industry, but one that, as we know, as authors, can sometimes have publishers have a lot of power over us. Now, the question is, what changed when the internet came? Amazon came, all these big retailers, and they continued to have all this power over us. We continue to still be, as writers, kind of trapped in this ecosystem where we didn't get to really build those direct connections to our audience. But now that's the big change that's happening with the creator economy. It's a big shift in the next iteration of where our publishing industry is going. So let's talk about that. What is creator economy? Well, it's an ecosystem of creators and their teams, platforms, and digital infrastructure that empower people to build digital businesses and communities around their passions and earned insight. That's the big picture. The creator economy, there's tons and tons of people participating in. Everyone from teachers creating, I remember in high school, I would watch high school history teachers on YouTube that would teach me about history. And then they would have a whole business off of that, of having study guides for standardized tests. Those are creators. We are creators as authors, almost all of us, whether you're traditionally published or indie published or hybrid published or not published. We all have probably social media accounts. We all interact on the internet through email. We're having some real estate, some infrastructure on the internet in one way or another. And we're going to learn how, by actually building the right structures of how we interact on the internet, we can supercharge both how we find readers in the digital world and the real world. So one last concept here that I just want to paint that's very specific to books is that world building, which we're all very familiar with. We can world build inside of our stories. One of my favorite things is a sci-fi author. Doesn't have to just now be in the realm of fiction, in the story. The creator economy allows us to merge the real world with our fictional worlds. What do I mean by that? Well, if the internet made the distribution of content limitless, new technologies in the creator economy are making the creation of content limitless, what we can do, what is possible as authors. And that means that we can create so much more interesting experiences for our readers, aided by these digital platforms, aided by what we can do in this new age of publishing. So I just want to give everyone a reminder that there's a lot going on. There's too much. There's too much. And I don't think you should start to open up a social media account on every platform to try and find new readers. I don't think that you should overwhelm yourself by looking into every new thing that's popping up to try and help you. Jane does actually an amazing job at uncovering a lot of this on her hot sheet. I'm a subscriber of it. So she does a great job uncovering a lot of these new opportunities. But the beauty is that this is a changing world and that you are just beginning. It's not too late to be part of this. It's never too late, because the beauty of the creator economy is that it's people creating stories for other people. And that is something that is so fundamentally human nature that it'll never go away. So we're almost to questions. 2 last key points. This one is on the secret business model of media. And this is what we call a synergy map. And this can feel like really like a little like overwhelming, but this is every author's secret dream. We all want to have our books turned into a movie. At least a lot of us do. That'd be fun in Hollywood. And who wouldn't want to have your next Harry Potter, like, you know, oh, we're going to open a theme park. That sounds cool to me as an author, except how do I do that? I need to have like the next unbelievable bestseller to have any of this come true. And it all feels out of our control. But with the creator economy, with the ability to diversify our income streams and provide new services to our readers, whether it's through a subscription model, whether it's through being able to diversify into different IP formats like the rise of audiobooks. This is all part of this bigger picture. We can now build our own synergy map, our own world around our stories, where reading your books is just the beginning. You can create merchandise online. I know some science fiction authors, Jason Cole and Nick Anspach. They make basically the same amount of money from merch as they do from selling books as sci-fi authors, because their brand is so strong and their readers want it. That is really, really interesting. And ultimately, all this enables us to, instead of thinking about how do we hit the New York Times bestseller list and sell 100,000 copies of our books, how can we build an intimate community of 1,000 readers, something maybe more achievable, and make an income from there? That's what Pat Flynn called the basically 1,000 true fans model. And that's what the creator economy is really built off of. Not saying you're going to be the next person who's famous and going to hit it big, but actually saying that there's a beauty in the small. So now let's get into our last part. And I promise with your questions, I want to answer how we can get started with all of this. Why I purposely didn't say, here's how to create content on social media, or here's how you get started with, working with this publisher or this platform, is that based on all of our individual situations, my advice will be different. There's generational differences in what kind of things readers like to read and how they like to read. Young readers, people around my age, we actually read a lot on our phones now, and print books, tons and tons of print books. Older readers tend to, all this generalizing, Kindles are quite popular, but still also print books. Print books haven't gone anywhere. Don't listen to what anyone said. They're super more popular than ever. Barnes & Noble's opening 30 stores next year, which is really, really cool. So this industry all around is flourishing. But what I want to just leave you with before we actually talk is that there's 3 misbeliefs that existed in this industry before the creator economy that now the creator economy is shifting. The first one is that authors, parentheses, only write books. Yes, authors definitely write books. That is what we do, but we also do more than that. One is that we're also involved in a world of business, whether we like it or not. I'm a huge supporter of literary fiction. I think that we are artists at our core, but at the same time, we are a part of this larger marketplace that, to be honest, I think can be very predatory and difficult for us as authors almost all the time. And why I like the creator economy it gives us a bit more control of how we want to interface with it, because we would like to hopefully make a living from our work. That's at least what I hope for you. So there's that aspect of it. Then it's write a great story first, then find readers. I see so many authors, myself included, who worked for 2 or 3 years in a book only to find out after they wrote, 100,000 words, we're going to redo it again and again and again, that this whole book was like not at all what maybe readers wanted, or what the readers that you could find wanted. And that's such a deflating feeling. And what I find about being a part of this creator economy is that we can create different kinds of content that are adjacent to our stories that allow us to test before we invest all this time into building out a book, if this is something that readers want, if this is something that we want to do, because it is a huge commitment and one of the hardest things to do in the world, writing a book. And I know so many of you here are in the process of doing that or have done that, which makes you a superstar. But I want you to have as much success as possible while doing that. The last misbelief is that publishers and platforms and retailers are more powerful than authors. That is a lie. We've been told that forever, and it's not true. This is something that both indie authors and traditionally published authors, a lot of us believe. There's no line there. We just are always looking for someone else to answer and solve our problems. And although that's a great narrative, if I'm a publishing company or I'm a platform, it's demoralizing to us artists who want to be able to create the things we love and provide the things we care about to our readers. The creator economy makes this possible, but it's not saying to abandon them, It's instead viewing publishers and platforms, whether you're an indie author, a hybrid author, or a trad author, as business partners rather than your employer overlords. Let's worship our readers, not algorithms and agents. Then our last 3 principles here, before we go out into questions, I promise. I want us to be data empowered, not data obsessed. What do I mean by this? We tend to always be looking, a lot of us, at the market of what the next thing editors want. What's the next trend that acquisition editors are buying? What is the next thing that the Amazon algorithm is pumping out? And we create for that. I'm not saying to ignore these things, but let's not be obsessed with them, because we are artists at our core and we want to do also what we love, right? It's about finding that intersection, not letting numbers rule us either. Another one is that having a direct connection to our audience and community, regardless of whether we're indie published or traditionally published, is essential. What do I mean by this? The most basic and simple advice I can offer you, which people have been telling broader in this community for a while, is get a mailing list. Have a direct connection to your readers where you're able to contact them through email. And it doesn't matter whether a publisher picks up your next book or whether the algorithm shoots it up to the top of the store, you can contact your true fans. That's huge. And the creator economy is making it possible to have more data that you can have access to on your readers and a greater ability to provide things through a direct relationship. I cover that in my book. We're not going to get into that right now. The last thing is readers first. I couldn't be more passionate about this. And I'm going to give an example that I already mentioned, which is Barnes & Noble. Barnes & Noble for a long time has been struggling, but their new CEO, he had a famous bookstore in London and did very, very well. Then he eventually was able to take over, oh my God, I'm forgetting the book chain. Help me out, the book chain in the UK. Waterstone. I'm like, it's with a W. He then eventually worked up to become the head of Waterstones, and he turned them around. Now he's turning Barnes & Noble around. And what is it here? Is it just this like magic of market timing, or is it something else? Well, if you listen to him talk, what he says was the big shift that they did as this big company to try and reimagine how they sell books and their business is put readers first. They, instead of having publishers pay for play at the front of the stores, were like, we're going to empower our local store owners and employees to choose the books that they think their readers would like the most. And lo and behold, it's turned the whole company around, putting readers first. Publishers don't always put readers first. Platforms don't always put readers first, but we can as authors. And that goes into the last point, the final point. And if you have one takeaway in all of this, is that this entire creator economy is built off trust, because we can now reach people with distribution and scale amplified by the internet. Now that I can sit here and talk to 120 people at once, which is awesome, and thank you for being here. That means that we can create trust at scale in our audiences, in our readers. And if you cannot continue to nurture and foster trust in your readers, that's how we don't become 20 or 30-year career authors and authors who might have one really great book, but ultimately, for some reason or other, their readers don't trust them as much to deliver that next time. And in this business, we always like to think about the new readers, the new hit, the new thing. But in reality, what makes us survive is our existing readership. And we have to be able to focus on them and continue building trust in them. That's a truism no matter what sector of publishing or genre you have. And I tried to make this advice as general as possible. But I'm going to stop sharing my screen and get into questions that y'all have about the creator economy, ways I can help you. I'm no expert. I don't know anything. I don't know everything, but I know something. I don't know anything. I won't be that humble. I do think I can help you.
Thank you, Michael. So I'll start off with a number of questions as we wait for some to roll in through the Q&A box. Basically holding your feet to the fire, but understand, I think, I'm like fully on board. I'm in favor of authors having direct relationships with their readership, whether that's through an email list or social or some other tool or platform. But I want to ask you some of the questions that I get asked, and that I find very challenging to answer. So let's take a writer who hasn't published anything as of today, or let's say it's minimal. No one knows their name. The conventional wisdom right now for such a person is, once they do have a book or several books, is to go and self-publish them, assuming they don't want a traditional deal, and go exclusive with Amazon and Kindle Unlimited in order to build an audience, because it's so hard to start from scratch. So what do you think for someone in that scenario?
So that could be an interesting path, but also there's other paths. And there's something to consider before you even begin publishing into Kindle Unlimited, because I think all of us know, like, just getting a book complete and then edited and then ready to publish is such a long process. And I want to take a step back and think about, what do we do before we get there? And I think just on the fundamental needs we have as writers, too often we neglect them because we put so much pressure on ourselves to make it, to create that next thing, that we don't think about how can we make this thing that we love, hopefully we love writing, something sustainable and long-term, because odds are that it's going to take us years of writing consistently, years of producing content for a specific audience, no matter how you reach them, KU, traditional publishing, etc., to actually maybe achieve a full-time income, to actually be successful. So I would ask writers to go back to first principles and think about, what community can you be involved in of both readers and authors that can give you a sense of belonging, so that you don't feel like you're alone in what is a very isolating career. That's like the first problem I think I'd solve, is where can you go to, again, be a part of a community of people. For some, that's being a part of like digital communities. For some, that's being a part of writers groups that meet in real life. And for some, it's a combo of both. But that's what I'd first think about doing. In terms of all the different pathways you could go, I would not try and do what everyone else is telling you to do, because they're always telling you what's worked for other people. And what's worked for other people may not work for you. Traditional publishing can be a great option for a lot of authors, but all traditional publishers aren't created equal. Working with the big four / we'll see where the big number ending evolves, how many of them in the long run, but they're a very different beast than working with smaller yet still traditional publishers. And they're a very different beast than working with now the emerging hybrid presses that kind of emerge with indie models with also traditional publishing. And then likewise, very different from indie publishing on serial fiction platforms, such as authors who are now making tens of thousands of dollars a month through subscriptions on places like Railroad, or authors who are now making lots of money on Kindle Unlimited. So I think it's all very different, and I would need to hear specifically an author situation to give them advice. But just look at the market at the broad scale and play to your strengths. Don't play to what someone else is selling you on.
That's some wisdom right there. Okay, so Rose is wondering, Michael, for your own work, what are your preferred ways or platforms to diversify engagement and income? Keeping in mind that your path isn't necessarily everyone else's path, but of course, people are curious about how you approach this.
Yeah, I want to like say two big caveats here. One is that I think my path is unique, as is everyone's. And the second one is that I think I have a bias because I am the CEO and co-founder of a publishing startup that's hoping to help you be able to make money through subscriptions. We're basically a technology platform that's kind of a better version of Patreon for fiction authors. So with that said, just take this advice with that in mind. And I would say that for me right now, my preferred ways of income are ultimately focused on still like book sales being a big part of it. So don't think that book sales aren't one-off, what I'll call a la carte book sales, whether it's someone buying an ebook or print book or audiobook format. Those are like the traditional like income streams we have in publishing. But things that I'm really excited about and things that I'm certainly beginning to pursue myself are subscriptions, which I'm going to just put a period there because we know that why I might be excited about that. But really at a broader scale, I think that subscriptions bake in this trust and the idea that readers have to keep coming back to your stories anyways, and actually make it your business model, that you want readers to continue coming back to what you're doing and continue supporting and interacting with your community. It's what I think is the foundation of a lot of this creator economy. But other things that I'm excited about. So I think authors have a lot of opportunity to create one-off like services / experiences for their readers. So one example could be like special editions of your books. That's something I'm really excited about. There's authors who are having readers pay anywhere for like $100 for a print book that's special bound, and it's really nice. But all of a sudden, an author can make $60 from a single reader, which is really, really interesting. And you're providing them this like incredible gift that they can have on their bookshelf. So I'm passionate about that income stream because I think it's accessible for a lot of us. I like things that combine what an author's doing in the physical world or the digital world, like the fictional one, and give readers opportunities to purchase things from them that they can own physically. So merchandise is another big thing that I also think is great. And the last thing I would say is I think monetizing community is really interesting. I was talking about how important community is for us as writers. It's really important for us as readers. And there's an emerging class of people who are disrupting, I'll say, the publishing industry that I call reading creators. Jack Edwards is an example. He has 1 million subscribers on YouTube, and he just like literally reads books. It's his blogs of his life as books. It's incredible that like this many people are interested in reading. It excites me. But what's also incredible is that he's now built a community of readers and he's able to monetize in a number of ways. Jane, you saw, had an ad read before this. So he does ad reads as well, where he has, basically utilizes his trust to be able to maybe have a new brand, be able to come in and be able to sell something to his audience that's on hopefully a good service, just like Jane does, just like that. And then with that as well, when you build a sort of community like that, you're able to actually monetize the community itself, where you can give a special experience, special interaction with a smaller group of your fans that they can pay you to be a part of. It's kind of the future of the bowling alleys, which if anyone's like a nerd into sociology and has read like Robert Putnam, you'll know what I'm referencing. But yeah.
I want to talk a little bit more about the subscription piece, especially. It's a topic near and dear to my heart since I do run a subscription newsletter. And one of the downsides of it for me is that it's very hard to take a break. Of course, I'm on a very strict kind of journalistic schedule every 2 weeks, and that might not apply to every person writing fiction. But that said, once you start in on a platform like Patreon or Ream, where people are their payments are recurring, like every month or every year, you have this commitment or this promise that you've made and you're on the hook. And so can you offer any guidance on how to handle, like, I think some people are intimidated or they fear burnout or they are burnt out. So
yeah, I know all those feelings very well. As someone who's like definitely been through like the depths of burnout before, and also someone who tends to put a lot in my plate, my biggest thing with anything in publishing, whether you're doing subscriptions or not, is to focus and to do one thing at a time. Don't be on every platform at once, creating, a million things. Don't be trying to run 3 pen names at once. focusing on one thing is way more powerful than trying to do three things kind of good. Now let's talk about subscriptions. I see a lot of authors in subscriptions feeling pressure that they have to provide like so much value for the readers that they're thinking I have to produce all these extra chapters. I have to be hanging out over email all the time. And it becomes this like unbelievably, sometimes toxic, but definitely taxing experience. This is not true for every author, but it can happen. So what do? I think there's one thing I want to share generally about what another lie we've been told in publishing, and another thing about how I actually cope with that because it's hard. So as authors, we've kind of been told readers are willing to pay anywhere from, if you're an indie author now, we're getting them up to $5 for an ebook. But either way, from anywhere from 15 to 20 for a paperback is typical. Maybe you'll get them for 35 to 30 for a hardcover book. But those are like the prices that every book is magically worth, no matter what, right? No matter what. But in reality, I don't actually see the market this way. I see selling books like us listening to music on Spotify. It's free now, basically free to listen to music on Spotify because we're all paying whatever, $10-ish a month, and we could just listen to musicians. But what's not free is going to actually support them and going to a concert. Those are quite expensive. Some people could say exorbitantly expensive. I would say that economically, you can't actually put a rational price on something so influenced by emotion. But certainly, if you want to get front seat tickets at Taylor Swift, that's going to be expensive. But what is Taylor Swift really doing at these concerts? Is she like giving her backstage people, because they paid 10 grand, they're like an hour of her time because, maybe they would love that, but is she doing that? No. Now, I'm not saying as authors, we should rip our readers off or charge $10,000 for a subscription each month. I think that would probably price out a lot of your readers. But an important thing to know about subscriptions is that you have different pricing tiers that you can price for different segments of your audience. So you might have a very cheap tier in your subscription that allows anyone who wants to support you within reason to maybe be able to afford it. Whereas you have higher price tiers where people who do really want to support you can do that. The thing we have to realize here with all this is that books are extremely, extremely underpriced, unbelievably underpriced. Barnes & Noble used to give 2 books. If you bought 2, you'd get 1 free. And the CEO said, we're going to stop doing this because it undervalues books. And we're just going to cut that out and give, you have to pay for the books you buy. And they saw sales increase, not decrease. What does that mean for us? Because of inflationary pressures and maybe Amazonian pressures, book prices have increased basically nothing since 1997. And inflation's gone up 100%, which means that you have to sell double the books to now make a living as an author. Have your books magically become half as valuable to your readers? No. What we now have as well is a world in which more content has to compete for the attention of your readers. So maybe in the beginning, when you haven't built that trust, they have to come in on the normal standard price for a book, which there's nothing wrong with, but it's relatively cheap compared to other things, whereas a subscription might be more expensive prorated over time. But that doesn't mean you have to provide limitlessly more value. Just because a reader is paying you 5 times more doesn't mean you now have to give them 5 extra books, because to that specific reader, you're creating extra value for them already. They wanted to give you more. And now they have an opportunity to get a little extra and give you a lot extra in terms of the value you're getting. So how do you actually approach this as an author? Because I just gave you the big picture. So we are always going to want to underprice ourselves as artists, because it's so tough to actually say like our work is worth this much. It's so difficult. So what I would look to do is think about the time that you're spending on something and put like $1 per hour to your time and pretend like you have a lot of readers, pretend like it's successful, and think, what would actually get me excited to do this? Like, am I going to do this for like what's prorated maybe $3 an hour? Like, that doesn't make a ton of sense if you're living in the United States. If you're living elsewhere, I still don't think that makes a ton of sense in many countries, but you get my picture there. Whatever makes sense for your situation. I also would recommend baking in breaks into your subscription. So if you have a subscription, you can pause payments so that you don't have to charge them either monthly or annually if you take a break. You can just tell your subscribers, communicating with them, I'm having a rough month. I, am only going to be doing one chapter. I'm not going to be releasing the next 3 chapters of my book. You'll be surprised how receptive people are to you being human and not a machine. What a concept. Your people who want to support you actually are connected to you. And then the last thing is that you want to under promise and over deliver. So do not get caught into the trap of thinking you need to give them everything to get them in the door. And oh no, what happens if I can't keep up? You'd rather actually self-select the fans that are so passionate about you that to what might feel like you, not too much that you're giving them, even though probably is, but we're going to do this in our brains all the time. You actually can over deliver on their expectations and keep them sticking with you. But don't push yourself in the ground of doing that. Literally say, well, I could do maybe like 10 things, but I'm actually going to do 3 things. Like do like under what you think your capacity is, because we're always going to overshoot and underprice. And in reality, you want to do the opposite, under promise and over deliver. So those are some of my advice on that.
It echoes a piece that appeared in Hot Sheet not long ago, and I'm going to put this link in the chat for those who would like to save that and read it later, where authors who've been successful with subscriptions soon realize that longer or more isn't necessarily better, and that they actually had better engagement with readers, people actually reading the stories when they could be read in a single sitting rather than something that was like this 10,000 word something because they felt like I have to deliver more in order for it to be worth the money. But a lot of people will support you because they want to support you, and they want to feel like they're on the inside.
You also have to use smallness to our advantage. And I'm not trying to say every author is small. There's probably some authors who are very successful listening, but you're small compared to Random House. Every author is. And Random House is a big corporation, has, and not just them, don't want to pick on them. Every publisher and platform as big corporations can't be small. They have to use bigness in their favor. They're impersonal. They do have to quantify things and try and deliver as much as possible for as little to compete with everyone. But in your world of readers that you've cultivated trust with, you are a small business just like the restaurant down the street. And I know for me, when I go to a restaurant that I really like, or I go to even a local bookstore, which I'm sure we all feel emotions to, you want to support the people running it because you get it. It's difficult. It's not easy to run a small business yourself. And essentially as authors, whether we have contracts with publishers or, partnerships with platforms because we give them our books to sell, we are all small businesses. And it's important to lean into that, not to be like, oh, no, we're going to be a big impersonal brand that's going to just, not actually focus on building those relationships with our readers, because at the end of the day, the readers who stick around with you on your subscription, from what I found talking to dozens of authors, we literally have 1,200 authors in our Facebook group who all focus on subscriptions. What I found from all these conversations is that the long-term readers who stick with them for years aren't there because of a particular story, aren't there because they get X chapter on X day or this book box at X time. It's because they like that author. They feel a relationship to them and the other readers who also support them, and they want to continue being a part of that community, continue having that author and their support of that author being a piece of their identity. And that is one of the most powerful things as humans, when we have 2 billion people on Facebook, but our minds can't trust more than 150 people because we, at our core, we're used to being hunter and gatherers like 40,000 years ago.
Okay, well, we're going to pivot a little to some tactics. And I know you go into this in your book. There are a couple questions about the email list. So Betsy's wondering, how would you start an email list when you basically have nobody on it and grow it in what she calls a non-obnoxious way, which is, and then we have another question related to what do you think about converting a LinkedIn audience to an email newsletter, or your blog audience to an email newsletter. So I know this is always hard for people to figure out how to get that thing to grow when you may have limited visibility, or you have to depend on a base that you have on social media.
LinkedIn, I want to cover them first because they have a really cool feature at the moment. I don't know if it'll last forever, where you can one time, if you have like a certain number of followers on the platform, actually basically direct message everyone asking them, and they'll get a notification to subscribe to your newsletter list. It's a pretty cool feature. And I've seen creators use this to great success to launch newsletter lists after they've already built a following on LinkedIn. There's a key finding there. So if you do that beginning when you only have 100 people, it might not be as useful to if you waited 6 months and built an audience of 10,000 people. You can then activate that feature of launching your newsletter and grow it with a lot more people. So what I think that means is that LinkedIn as a platform, they have 750 million people on it, have found that they want to support creators to grow their own businesses off platform because they know it'll be a virtuous cycle of people coming back to the platform to find new creators. That's cool. They want to support you. But what that also means is they don't want creators selling things immediately. They don't want to stop that, but they'd rather incentivize you to grow an audience over time. And instead of, hey, day one, I know you just met me, give me your email, it being a thing of like, you've read 3 of my posts on LinkedIn. You got a lot of benefit from this. Now give me your email. So we could take that finding to other platforms. And my general advice, no matter what platform you're on, is that don't use social media platforms as just an advertisement. As, oh, here's my Instagram post, go buy my book. Here's my newsletter list. You want to give value to your audience native to the platform that you're in. And there's a beauty in that because you can repurpose content from other platforms. If you're a nonfiction author, I think this is especially easy because you might have things in your books that you can break down into articles, into tweets, and even TikTok videos that can share insights right with them that share, a little bit of what's going on in your book. But if you're a fiction author, this is possible too. And you could literally, if you're on a platform like YouTube, I've seen authors literally do read aloud to their books. And I talked to an author the other day who is uploading a serial fiction podcast. She does no other promotion for it. And it's just her narrating what she's writing. And she gets 100 downloads per day. Now, over time, that can convert to an interesting audience. So what I would say with that is create content native to where you're at and don't focus on immediately bringing someone to your book or to your newsletter list because they have to trust you a bit to do that first. And they see dozens of TikToks a day, dozens of LinkedIn posts. How can you cut through that noise and be like, hey, I'm here to make you feel safe, inspired, whatever that adjective is that you want your readers to associate with you?
There are a couple of questions that touch on kind of the difficulty of simply deciding where to focus first. So you mentioned the importance of focus and how that I couldn't agree more that it provides you with so much leverage to focus on one thing. And so, for example, Linda is saying, she has a website with a podcast, she has a blog, she has a newsletter, she does a lot of writing, and she sees a lot of platforms that she could potentially use out there. And she's wondering if it would, in the end, be more effective to just build her audience from her website. And then similarly, we have JD saying, I don't know at what point I should quit writing and start publishing. And of course, then you have to start making choices. And that can be I think people are worried about making the wrong choice or wasting their time or picking a loser platform.
Yeah, well, this is every platform's a loser in the long run. Rarely do companies make it 50 years. And as authors, your intellectual property is valuable 70 years after you die. So your estate will accrue value to the people you pass it down to, probably way longer than any social platform that'll exist. I mean, there's barely any companies in like the history period that have made it beyond 100 years, and almost none that have even made it beyond 50 years. So what does that mean? It means that any platform is not where you want to be. You want to be in your own platform in the long run. But that comes to the website question. It could actually be not a great move to just focus on your own platform, because these platforms on rented land, we'll call it, platforms that you don't own, platforms that could go under any day or have, a billionaire buy it for better or worse. All these things, what we have to think about is that, well, how am I going to get people to my website? Like, who's typing in my website and finding it? The answer is probably no one, or probably very little people. Don't want to spoil it, but trust me, this is how it works for everyone. You're not unique. So how can you then get people who one day want to come to your website? And you have to go to where those people already are. Now, how do you make that decision? So here's my biggest piece of advice. You want to first figure out who is your audience as an author. Now, you might have different segments of your audience, but at least nail down, I would love if women in their 40s interested in X were reading my books. That's very general, but that's general enough to at least share that we're getting a little bit specific, right? Now, where do people of that age group with those interests typically hang out and engage? There's a big spoiler alert here. A lot of times you as an author are part of that group of people, and you as an author engage in those same places and enjoy it. So if that's true, we found a golden egg. Focus on that one platform you really love. But let's pretend, for probably the most of us, that that isn't true. This person who wants to write for this specific audience, let's pretend it's me. I'm not a woman in my 40s who has an interest in X. I'm not that person, but maybe I want to reach them. So what can we do? Well, we do want to kind of literally do some market research in the beginning, kind of like you would research publishers and agents and figure out, okay, which platforms probably have this audience. So if we're talking about women in their 40s, Pinterest tends to be pretty popular. Another popular one is Facebook, although definitely 50 plus is even more popular, Facebook. These are just broad generalizations. For your specific community, you might realize that, oh, wow, there's some really popular creators of this specific piece of, interest in either this nonfiction content or this science fiction genre or romance on this platform. So then you map it out and then you think, okay, these are like 3 or 4 platforms I came up with. And that's cool, but that's so overwhelming to be creating all these platforms. Don't do that. You have to then figure out, well, which ones do I like? Your honest answer might be that you like none of them. It's valid. I understand. But if you really want to find readers in social media, you will have to deal with some of the things that come with no platform being perfect for you and thinking, what is that one I want to start with? I recommend just starting with one and doing it from anywhere from 30 to 90 days and seeing if you like it. And I don't mean go all in and produce something each day. I mean, don't abandon writing completely. Maybe you want to, if you've already written a book and you're ready to start promoting it, maybe spend more of your time doing that, but don't totally shelve writing. But in that time, as you learn that platform, hopefully you can see, oh, it's working for me, or, oh, it's not. And you could always try another one, because the key insight in this is that rarely any people are famous across all social media platforms. People become famous or garner an audience of fame that could be even 1,000 people on one place first. So it's a disadvantage to you to be on 6 different platforms at once. I know for me, I grew my YouTube channel from 0 to 10,000 people, and that's all I did. I didn't go anywhere else. I just focused on YouTube. There's a whole other story about creator mental health that can come in with these situations, and how once you actually gain people watching you, it can be both a blessing and a curse, but that's a separate question. So, yeah.
Well, I would love to address that separate question, because it's on my list, about the dark side to this that people need to watch for. I'm not saying you can eliminate everything unpleasant about work. I mean, there are things that you just have to deal with, but can you offer any guidance on that front?
I think that the dark side is that the creator economy right now is being built off. It's creators building their own platforms off of the platform economy, which rose starting about 20 years ago, but we're maybe at peak platform economy now. And as you interface this platform economy to go begin your own home in the creator economy, we have to realize that these platforms have created the most addictive machines maybe ever in humankind. Scrolling through TikToks like digital cocaine. It's very, very addictive, and not just for the user. We talk about the addiction for users. We don't as much talk about addiction for creative people, but these platforms, Amazon included, by the way, are designed to be addictive. They're designed to get you going back and checking your dashboards. It's funny, in traditional publishing, you don't see as much data as authors at all. You might see too little. And then the opposite extreme is knowing every second, 24/7, how many people are reading your books or watching your content. That is a crazy different extreme that, again, gets you wedded to that platform. Literally, you'll start to feel the dopamine and adrenaline as things start to do well. And the dark side is that it's impossible to not feel a pull towards wanting more views, wanting more this. And this is where the business model of platforms directly is antithetical to your business model. Your business model as an author is built off of engendering trust in an audience, getting them to want to keep coming back for more content from you, and wanting to maybe buy cool book boxes from you, want to support you extra, right? Like, that's your business model. So having 1 million people watch a random TikTok means nothing. You'd rather have 100 people watch something and really get connected to who you are. But these platforms, for them, that's not where they make their money. They make their money by having massive ad ecosystems where, literally, just to give some perspective here, Platforms running on advertising models who have hundreds of millions of people struggle to make a business. You have to have billions of people to have valuable enough data at scale for advertisers. So you need to continue addicting billions of people spending time on this platform. What does that mean? The people who've created maybe some of the biggest machines and businesses in the world who are now trying to get you to be the person actually creating what's getting people addicted. That means they would love for you to keep creating content on a platform that gets more people watching, but maybe not the right people watching, and maybe not the people that you can actually build a deep connection with. So the big thing is that the mental health problem is we can get caught up in numbers and realize that our actual creative goals, our soul isn't being fulfilled, but a platform's advertising budget is. And that's a really dark place to be in, that I've been in personally, and why I recommend that authors with all this take a long-term mindset, operate with knowing that you have the power at the end of the day, but the power doesn't come by putting all of your hopes in a specific follower count on a specific platform. That's when you've now licensed control to your business to another platform. Mentally you have, and that can be a dangerous place.
Okay, moving on to more positive things, I think. We've got a couple questions that relate to the nonfiction side. Now, I think all of your advice applies equally regardless of category or genre, but I want to give the nonfiction folks some love. So
yes,
first, Victoria says all of her marketing focuses on connections with readers, and she writes nonfiction, and she invites people to join her in presentations at book launch events. She has them guest at her blog, and she finds this very gratifying and effective in building a community over the years. I've actually met Victoria at an event dinner at, I think it was at the Writer's Digest conference, if I'm remembering correctly, or maybe it was Digital Book World. In any event, I've met Victoria through one of these events. And she says it does seem to lead to more engagement and attendance. And she believes there might be ways to expand on this, but she's not sure what. So she's kind of looking to see if anything occurs to you. And then Lisa is asking a broader question kind of along this vein. Are there any nonfiction self-help people in your community? And do you have any examples of success that you see in the nonfiction space?
Okay, that's great. So I actually think that nonfiction might be certainly has actually more success than fiction. And I think might be easier to follow the creator economy model. So I think my good news for you is that you might have a lot of opportunity ahead of you. Not saying that fiction authors don't. I definitely have talked a lot about how I think fiction authors maybe have more opportunity than they realize, but as a nonfiction author, so one creator that I want to recommend, just give a shout out, and I recommend listening to his podcast, consuming his content, because he's very good at what he does, is Jay Clouse. He runs this brand called Creator Science, and basically all focused on similar things that we're talking about today. He's not personally in my community, but I met him actually at a conference as well, Creator Economy Expo. So I'm just throwing someone out there who, if you want to really dive deep, I recommend you go there. Now, on people who I've seen be successful at this, because our community, by the way, and Ream are focused on fiction authors. So I'm not saying if you're nonfiction, you can't use Ream or you can't be a part of our community, but we're definitely centered on fiction authors. So I don't have specific examples within our fiction community, but I can give you examples I've seen. And giving your community advice and seeing that engaging a community is going well, I'll try and give you some insights on that too. So I think that generally, if you're a nonfiction author, books are like the ultimate trust mechanism. If you can get someone to finish reading a book from you, this is true for fiction authors too, by the way, that is like one of the most incredible things. That's 5 to 10 hours of someone sitting there and being with you. I think the problem is we've basically stopped it there and then said, okay, how do we sell them another book? And in fiction, we come up with these ways to maybe sell, be able to generate them more value and be able to capitalize on that trust. In nonfiction, there's more proven models. So I saw in the chat, Teachable was mentioned. Teachable is a platform that you could sell courses on. They recently hiked their prices, but you can still use that software to be able to sell courses. You can do consulting calls. You can do paid communities. Jay Clouse is an example of a creator who runs a paid community that I'm not endorsing it. I'm just saying it's there. So there's things that you can do to be able to provide, again, extra education and insights to your audience. And I want to recommend a book that I think could be really, really interesting to nonfiction authors, especially thinking about this, because it was written by a nonfiction author, and it's called Subscription Marketing by Ann Janzer. I recommend the book, and I think it could be really interesting to dive into a bit more of, well, how do you create that trust? What does marketing in this way really look like? And your books can be used as like a lost leader a lot of times. Because if you just get someone to read your book, they can participate in your community, they can buy your courses, they might want to access your services. And that's like, could be way more profitable for you. There's examples of like people in software. Russell Brunson was basically a nonfiction author who created a community of entrepreneurs around what he's doing and built ClickFunnels, which is very, very big company. So this is happening everywhere all the time. And I think there's a lot of opportunity in terms of building your own community, if I get that right, and how you can create events and things that can get them more interested. Is that the next thing I can answer?
Sure.
Okay. So trying to, without knowing the specific demographics or audience in your community, from my experience running a community, I think that the biggest problem that happens at a certain point as when you're running a community of any sort is that people build a personal relationship with you or your characters and want greater access to them, but then your resources to actually give that in the form of time dwindle. Like you can't answer 30 emails every day forever. And if you get to that point, which it sounds like you're seeing success in your community, it's a great problem to have, but it's still a problem. So we're actually getting ready to do this right now in our subscriptions for authors community, but you want to be able to empower people existing in your community to be able to basically share their own insights and to give them status within your community so that they can maybe create a spinoff or be able to help you run live events, help you do it. Because when you're trying to manage everything as a single creator, it's like you've built Disney World yet had no employees or no characters who are like in their suits. That's very difficult to manage. So basically almost every community platform that you use, whether it's Circle, Geneva, Mighty Networks, even Facebook, enables you to actually just give people special privileges in the group, admins, and I would build that inner circle team and ask them, what can I do more of here? Like what's working really well? What are you really liking as people who are super in tune to this? And, maybe they give you a great idea for the next live event to do. In terms of what I think has helped my community the most grow, it's creating content that basically interests someone and solves a problem for them that can be solved within 3 to 5 minutes. This is in nonfiction. That then when they get to the end of it, they're like, oh, wow, that was really cool. I want to learn more. And it's something that, yeah, and you can introduce people to. It's shareable, but that doesn't take like 10 hours to read immediately. Eventually they'll get to your 10-hour read, but it takes a while to get someone to trust you enough to read a nonfiction book or a fiction book.
An hour has gone by very quickly. I want to respect everyone's time here and yours too, Michael. I have an ending question where I'd just like you to talk a little bit about why you decided with your co-founder to put time and energy into Ream. What did you feel like was missing that you wanted to provide to authors?
Yeah, well, I think there's 3 main motivations for me. For Amelia Rose, my co-founder, she's very successful subscription author, so she makes 6 figures a year doing it. And I've learned a lot from her just about that the business model can work. And I thought, oh, wow, that's cool. Like I saw that nonfiction authors are benefiting from this creator economy, but I wasn't sure how fiction authors could. But she opened me up to the world of fiction authors doing it. So one thing was just realizing there's so much opportunity in that. And that I, being on a platform like Amazon, I was spending about maybe 80%, 90% of my income on advertising, trying to build a readership, and then wasn't actually building relationships with them. And I wanted to figure out how could I do this in a way that's sustainable. When you are able to make money by providing people additional value, it tends to make something more sustainable. So I was very selfishly curious and learning more about the business model. And then from there, me and Amelia realized that no platform really allows you to do that easily as a fiction author. So let's go do that. My second motivation, though, was noticing what was going on with emerging technologies. I don't want to get into conversations about buzzwords, but we'll just say AI and leave it there. It's scary when other platforms have so much power and data, when data is what fuels these things. And it made me feel like I really want to create a world where we can have a more human connection, be part of the digital layer of being an author and a writer and a reader. And, building a fiction place or fiction site, a subscription platform centered around not just stories, but community became something that I found essential for us as authors to keep our own sanity and our own control, which gets to the last point. I became very frustrated working with startup founders in the space, working in the technology space, because I'm a sci-fi author, really got interested in that. And after I started realizing that so many people don't actually have our best interests in mind as authors, I'm like, I'm an author. I understand this. I've been struggling to make a living as an author for 5 years now. I think that someone who knows the problems and knows what this feels like, what if no one does this? Like, I'm going to be stuck working with these people. And it felt like a dark future for me and for my friends. So I was like, maybe we can create something different that could do something better for authors, because we're by fiction authors for fiction authors. So it's been really fun. And ultimately, we give our authors control too on our platform. We are not another platform or another retailer, but your platform. And we bake that into our business model and give you actual control of your essential user data. And that's something no one really does, including Patreon, at least with everything we give you. So this was, we thought, a nice step forward in something where I'm like, well, if this doesn't exist for me as an author, I'm not going to be able to do my career, the career I want to have. And I figured, well, whoever wants to come along with the ride with me, we'll be grateful.
Wonderful. Michael, I just think your efforts are so impressive, and I'm going to be really looking forward to seeing how Ream grows and develops. In the chat, I've put the link once again to Michael's book, The Creator Economy. I highly recommend taking a look at it, especially if this concept is newish to you or you're looking for more tactical guidance. I think that book will answer a lot of your questions about moving forward. Again, if you want to check out Ream, that link is Ream Inc. Is that open? Is that still in? Yeah. What's the status there?
I'll mention that. I don't want to like link your time. If anyone wants to check out Ream, that means a lot. Right now, we're accepting, we have our first authors on the platform. So if you want to join our wait list, we should be able to bring you on by May. And in the wait list, you'll be able to get a lot more information on subscriptions, an invite to our community. So if you do go there, it's a great place to get introduction to subscriptions. And probably by the time you'd be ready to set something up, we'll be able to let you on, because very gratefully, due to the hard work of Sean, who's our lead engineer, we're getting ready to be open to the public. We got to just start with our small group of authors first. So yeah, that's where we're at right now.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay. Thank you once again. Thank you all for joining me today for the sermon. I do have another session coming up in late February. This is a clinic rather than a sermon, where we're going to be talking about working with a publicist when you invest thousands of dollars in working with a professional to market and promote your book. What else should you be doing to ensure that your investment pays off? So you can find the link to register for free for that session at my website. I'm going to drop the link into the chat just in case anyone doesn't know where to go, which seems unlikely, but just in case. All right. Thank you all. And Michael, I look forward to seeing you soon at Digital Book World.
I will see you actually next week. That's wild. And I'll see everyone else hopefully around. Feel free to reach out to me. If you go to the link tree at some point, you can find my email there, I think. I can put my link tree in the chat. Feel free to check out what I'm doing, and feel free to contact me. I'd love to stay in touch with you all. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you. Have a great afternoon, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.